Okay, it looks like it's time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our live workshop today. My name is Isaac and I will be the instructor for the workshop. And today's topic is going to be Express routing. Okay? So routing in Express refers to how a server responds to client requests and specific endpoints which we designate. So let's go ahead and just start off by creating a simple Node Express app. So I'm just going to go ahead and I will, right here on my desktop, create a new folder. And let's go ahead and let's call this our backend. Okay, and then I'm going to open up my command line here, change directories onto my desktop, and then into my backend folder there. Next, I'll open up Visual Studio and open up the backend folder on my desktop. And from here, we need to go ahead and we add a server file. So I'm going to do that right in my root directory. I'll call it server.js. And from here, we need to install the Express framework, and that way we can use it to set up our routes. Okay, and so we can do that. First, we'll initialize our package.json. So we'll say npm init. And it's going to ask us information about our app. And at this time, I'm just going to hit enter through all the prompts. And that way it will generate this package.json, which just has, again, metadata about our app. And then we're going to be able to track our dependencies here. So to install Express, we can go ahead and we can run npm install express --save. Okay, as you can see, we have Node modules folder here, and Express has been tracked to our dependencies. I'm going to install one more package, and this package is called body parser. And the reason I'm installing body parser is because Express is non-opinionated, which means it works with many different forms of data from JSON to XML and others. So to make sure that the data is in the format we want it to, we bring in body parser, and then we can specify JSON format. Okay, so now we've got that brought in. Let's go ahead and set up a simple server here inside of our server.js. So I'll start by creating a variable which is equal to the import for the Express framework. Then from here, I'll go ahead and create a variable which is equal to the import for body parser. And then I'll go ahead and create a variable called app, which is equal to a new instance of an Express application. Next, let's go ahead and let's use the listen method to listen in on our local port 3000. So from here, save all, and then from here to run the script, we can go node server.js. As you can see, instead of exiting the script, it just hangs there. And that means it has been connected to this port. So let's go ahead and we go to navigate to the local port 3000. We can see that although, you know, we haven't set up any view engine, right, any response, it is, you know, letting us know this port is live. So if I try to go port 4000, for example, it just lets me know that it's not active at all. Okay, so we know that the port's active and it can now listen in for incoming requests. So now let's go ahead and let's set up the routing. Okay, and why we would want to set up routing in the first place is because the backend is ultimately tied to your database. And your database is going to have many different collections of data. You can have user data, and maybe you'll have movie data, right? And the list could go on. And so each of these groups of data, you want a specific API set up. And if you don't know what an API is, it stands for Application Programming Interface, which is a series of publicly exposed endpoints, which we can send requests to and carry out different operations. Okay, so in this example, let's go ahead and let's create a user's route for our user data and a movies route for a movie data. So what I'm going to do is from the root directory, I'll create a new folder and we'll call it routes. Within routes, I'm going to create a new file, and the new file I'll call users.js. And I did do this on purpose with a plural. It is common convention with Express that you put an S at the end of your routes. Okay, and so now I can go ahead and do the same thing for a movies route. Okay, so I'll say movies.js. So now, back in my server, I can register these routes. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up body parser. That way I can parse, incoming request body into JSON format. So what I'll do is I'll say app.use, and I will use bodyparser.json. So now my request will be parsed to JSON format. From here, I need to now tell it what middleware to use for my routing endpoints. Okay, so I will say when someone makes a request to /users, we'll go ahead and we will redirect them to the user's route. Okay, so what we need to do then is we need to create a variable which represents the user's route. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we'll come up here and we'll say const users equals require, and then we'll specify the file path. So the routes folder /users. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing for movies. We'll say const movies is equal to the import for the movies route located in the routes folder. And now we can specify each of these as a specific route for a specific endpoint. So whenever a user makes a request to the /users endpoint, we will then direct them to the user's route. And then same thing with movies. Okay, so when someone hits the /movies endpoint, then we will go ahead and direct them to the movies route. Okay, so now we got that set up. Let's go ahead and go to our user's route and set that up. So we'll start by importing Express. Okay, and then we'll set up the Express router. So we'll say const router, oops, there we go, equals, and then we'll go ahead and we'll say express dot router. Next, we need to go ahead and specify an endpoint. So I'll just say router.get. When they hit the root here, we'll instantiate HTTP protocol, which is a request being sent in, and then we'll send back a response. Okay, and the response is going to be some user data. So I'll go ahead and I'll create some user data up here. So I'll say users equals an array, which is an object, and I'll have a name of John, and I'll have an age, maybe 20, and then we'll do one more user here. I'll say Jane, age 30. Okay, so now we got some user data. We'll go ahead and send that back in the response. We'll say res.send, and from here we'll go ahead and say users. Okay, last thing we need to do is we need to export this router. Okay, so how I can do that is I'll say module.exports equals router. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and let's head over to movies, and let's do similar approach to here. Okay, so we start off by importing Express. Then from here, we import the router. And after that, we go ahead and we set up our endpoint. So we'll say router.get root, send in a request, and then we'll send back a response. And we'll make it, array of, objects just like we have in movies. Okay, so I'm going to say movies equals an array, and the title of the movie will be Star Wars, and the genre will be fantasy. And then we'll do another movie, and different genre. Now we'll take these movies and we'll send them back in the response. Finally, we'll export the router. Okay. And so now we have a couple routes set up to where when we hit, these given endpoints, it's going to send back either movie data or user data. Okay. So let's go ahead and try this out. We're going to be testing it today with the tool Postman. If you don't have Postman, you can go to getpostman.com and install it for free. So I'm going to open up Postman. Okay, then we're going to refresh our server, pick up on all those changes. And then I'm going to run a GET request to localhost 3000/users. You send the request. Now, as you can see, it hits that given endpoint in the route, and then it sends back the response. Okay, as we can see, we have /users here. In our server, it hits /users, directs it to the user route, and then, sends back the user data. Okay, so let's go ahead now and test out movies. So we go get to movies, send that off. And as we can see, we're getting the data corresponding to the route we're hitting. Okay? And so, this is just an example of how we can, retrieve the data. But now let's explore, how we can also update this data, delete it and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's just go ahead and go to movies. Okay, and within movies, let's create a post request to add a new movie. And so I'm going to say router.post. And from here, we're going to take a request body and we're going to push it into the movies array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say movies.push rec.body. Once it's pushed that in, I'll send back the new array of movies. So say res.send movies. So let's go ahead and let's save all there. And we refresh the server, pick up on our changes. Now let's send a post request with a new movie to this endpoint. So I switch this to post, and hitting the movies endpoint, I add a body. And the body is going to be raw, and it's going to be JSON format. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and give a title. We'll say Friday the 13th. And we'll give a genre. And the genre will be horror. Okay. So when we hit this endpoint, it should push this movie into the array and send us back the new array. So we send that off. And as we can see, we now have 3 movies in our array versus just the first 2. Okay? And so just like movies, we can do the same thing inside users. We want to add a new user. So I can say router.post. Send in a request. And then for the response, we'll go ahead and we'll say users.push. And we will push in the request body. And then we'll send back the new array of users. So from here, we save all. And we refresh our changes. And then we'll go back to Postman here. And we'll make a post to the users endpoint. And then for the request body, we'll give it the user name of Jack and an age of 40. Okay, so we send this off. We can see now we have 3 users instead of 2. And the new user matches the data which we just sent over. Okay. So moving on, let's go ahead and let's talk about how we can, update their data in these given routes. Okay. So to perform an update, we'll set up a put request. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach a request param, which is going to target the title of the movie we want to update. All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to do a for loop so we can iterate through the movies and compare them, the title to the request params title. So I'm going to say for let I equals 0, I is less than movies.length, and I will iterate and increase 1 each loop. So within the loop, I'm going to make an additional statement. I'm going to say if movies at the index of I dot title equals the request params title, well, then it's a match, and I want to update the genre according to the request body genre. So I will say movies at the index of I dot genre equals rec dot body dot genre. Okay, and then after that has been modified, I'll go ahead and send back the new array. So we'll say res.send movies. And if it doesn't match, we'll just continue to the next iteration of the loop. So let's save all. Refresh our server here, and then we'll go back to Postman. We'll switch this out for /movies. We'll make a put request to this endpoint, and then we'll send over a new genre. Okay, so I'm going to target Star Wars, and I'm going to change the genre from fantasy to super awesome. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Missing my genre. There we go. Okay. So we send this off. Okay. We can see that it found the movie which matched the request parameter, and it updated the genre based on the request body that was sent over. So just like the movies, we can do the same thing with our users. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say router.put, and instead of a title, we'll just use a name. And then from here, we can go ahead and do pretty much the exact same thing as here, right? We'll start off with the for loop. Say I is equal to 0, and we'll keep the loop going as long as I is less than movies.length. And I will increment 1 each loop. So within the loop, we will compare movies at the index of I dot, oops, not movies, users. There we go. Within the loop, we'll compare users at the index of I dot name to the request params name. So we'll say request params name. And if it matches, then we want to update the age. Okay, so we'll say users at the index of I dot age equals the request body age. And after the update is done, we'll go ahead and we'll send back the new array of users. Otherwise, if it does not match, we'll go ahead and continue to the next iteration of the loop. So we'll save all and refresh our server, pick up on those changes. From here, we can go back to Postman, and we'll do a put request to users. And then we'll say John. Okay. And from here, we'll aim to change the age of John from 20 to 40. Okay, so all I'll do is on the request body, I'll give it an age of 40. So we send this over. We can see that it finds the name John, which matches the request parameter, and it updates the age according to the request body. Okay, and finally, let's go ahead and let's explore how we can delete a given movie or user. Okay, so to do this, I would set the delete endpoint, and I'm going to take in the title of the movie we want to delete. And then from here, we simply got to loop through the given movies, and if the title matches, we'll go ahead and remove and splice that movie out. So what I'll do is I'll say for let I equals 0, I is less than movies dot length, and I will increment 1 each loop. And then if movies at the index I dot title is equal to the request params title, then we're going to go ahead and splice that out. So we'll say movies dot splice at the index of I and the quantity of 1. Okay, and then after it's spliced out, we'll go ahead and send back the new array of movies. Otherwise, if it does not match, we'll continue to the next iteration. So let's save all, and let's see if we can remove a movie by hitting this endpoint. So we go back to our server, we set up a delete request, and we aim this delete request for localhost 3000/movies/Star Wars. Okay, hit send. As we can see, it finds the movie Star Wars, removes it from the array, and sends us back the updated array. Okay, and so just like movies, we can do this with users too. Okay, so I'm gonna go to users, and I'll say router.delete. And then instead of deleting by title, I'll delete by name. And from here, I'll go ahead and start with a loop. Within the loop, I'll run a conditional, which will compare users, the index of I, name, to the request params name. And if it matches, then we'll go ahead and we will splice that out. Okay, so we'll say users, index of I, we'll say users.splice, index of I, quantity of 1, and then we'll send back the newly updated users. And in the event that it doesn't match, we'll continue to the next iteration. And so we'll say else. Okay. All right, so let's save all. And we refresh. From here, let's send a delete request to the user's endpoint. So I'll come here, we'll say users/John. We don't have to send over a request body. We just need the name. We send. As we can see, it finds the user with the name John, and it removes that person from our array altogether and sends us back the updated array. So this, in a nutshell, is how we can set up routing in Express. As you can see, it's very much connected to our database logic and the differences between our different data, but it's also nice and an organized way to keep our requests separate and redirected to the points we want them. So let's go ahead and open the floor, and let's see if anyone has any questions over what we've been over. So mics are unmuted. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. All right, I don't hear anyone. Going once, going twice. All right, we're out of here. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day and happy coding.